Elon Musk is preparing the largest initial public offering in human history. At a $1.75 trillion target valuation, SpaceX would be worth more than every American defense contractor combined. Worth more than the market caps of Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Disney, Nike, and Starbucks all put together. And worth more than the top 10 companies on the London Stock Exchange combined. So if you're wondering who the fuck is buying SpaceX, a company losing $5 billion per year at the largest IPO valuation in history, well, the answer is you. Because within a few weeks, your retirement account is going to be one of the biggest buyers of SpaceX stock, whether you like it or not. And that's because NASDAQ quietly introduced a brand new rule designed specifically to make that happen. But before we get to the rule, you need to understand why this all matters. Because the only way a nearly $2 trillion valuation makes any sense is if SpaceX is actually the company the public believes it to be. But it's not. If you ask 10 people on the street what SpaceX sells, most will say rockets. Some will say Mars stuff, but both are wrong. SpaceX isn't just a rocket company. It's actually 3 businesses stacked on top of each other, and the rocket business isn't even the most important one. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly that comes with this company, and trust me, it gets pretty ugly. So let's start there. It's the part of SpaceX that gets the most attention and creates the least value. XAI is mostly known for owning the social media platform, Twitter. The social media platform X. Anyways, it's also the AI lab Elon Musk founded in 2023 to compete with OpenAI and Anthropic. And a few months ago, SpaceX acquired XAI in an all-stock deal that valued the combined entity at $1.25 trillion, with XAI itself accounting for $250 billion of that. If you're wondering how it's allowed for one of Elon's companies to acquire another one of Elon's companies, the answer is, I have no idea, but it happened. So with a $250 billion valuation, you'd assume XAI is a financially sound company, right? Or at least close to it. Or at a minimum, that the people who built it still work there. Well, none of those things are true. XAI was founded with 11 co-founders, researchers and engineers from DeepMind, OpenAI, Google, and the University of Toronto. It was a true heavyweight team. But by 2025, the company was burning more than $1 billion a month, and by March of this year, every single one of the 11 co-founders had walked out from the company. Then Elon, on his own social media platform, publicly admitted that XAI had to be rebuilt from the foundations up, which is the polite way of saying the CEO of SpaceX just paid $250 billion for an asset that needs to be rebuilt from scratch. And to say that XAI is overvalued would still be a massive understatement. OpenAI generates around $24 billion in revenue annually and is currently valued at around $850 billion, while Anthropic generates over $30 billion annually and is valued around $400 billion. But XAI, who estimates $1 billion in revenue, was bought for $250 billion. So the market is pricing XAI like it's Emirates, but in reality it's more like Spirit Airlines. I like to look at XAI as the reverse Jerome Powell piece of SpaceX. Instead of printing cash, it burns whatever cash the rest of the business generates. But it's also only one of the 3 businesses inside SpaceX. The other 2 businesses are the ones actually doing the work. But before we get to the crown jewel, let's start with the one that gives the company its name. This is the part most people picture when they hear the name SpaceX. It's the rocket business. It launches things into orbit, satellites for the US government, cargo to the International Space Station, crewed missions for NASA, and a lot of other satellites, which we'll get to in a minute. And the rocket business at SpaceX generated roughly $4 billion in revenue last year, which may sound impressive until you compare it to the $2 trillion valuation. Then, it suddenly doesn't sound impressive at all. Especially when you realize the rocket business represented only about a quarter of SpaceX's total revenue last year. So this brings us to the third business. It's the one most people don't think about when they hear the word SpaceX, but it's also the one that investors care about most, and it's the one that's paying the bills for everything else. This is the crown jewel of SpaceX. Starlink is a satellite internet provider. It's the answer to the question, what if Comcast, but in space? Which sounds like the kind of thing a venture capitalist tweets at 3 in the morning, except in this case, Elon actually built it. And Starlink launched in beta in 2020, and 6 years later, it's the fastest scaling telecom company in human history. There are now more than 10,000 Starlink satellites in Earth's orbit, each one beaming internet down to a little dish that sits on your roof. The dish points itself at the satellites talk to each other, and somehow this works. Here's what entrepreneur and podcast host Scott Galloway had to say about Starlink.
And then the best product, I think, in the last few years has been Starlink.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I just think it's absolute. I've done podcasts from planes. I can talk to my sons on FaceTime. that product is, all airlines are flying the same tin can, same routes, same bad food, a real point of differentiation for them. And that's also in maritime. I think Starlink is the best tech product. So power to him. When they go public, is SpaceX an amazing company or is it overvalued? The answer is yes. Two can be true at the same time.
Starlink has now grown to over 10 million active subscribers in roughly 150 countries, and in 2025, Starlink alone brought in $11.4 billion in revenue, which is roughly 61% of SpaceX's total revenue for the year. But Starlink's ability to generate revenue isn't even the most impressive part. It's the efficiency underneath that revenue which blows my mind. 2 years ago, Starlink's profit margins were about 41%. This year, it's now 63%, which means Starlink added over 20 points in margin expansion in just 2 years. So yeah, the margins aren't just good, they're also accelerating. And Starlink isn't just for consumer internet either. There's a maritime version that ships and yachts use, an aviation version that commercial airlines have started to roll out, and a classified defense version called Starshield with contracts at the National Reconnaissance Office and the Pentagon. So this is the real SpaceX. It's a satellite internet provider that prints cash, a rocket business that's doing pretty good, but is valued like it's already colonized Mars, and after the February merger, an AI lab that lights roughly $1 billion a month on fire. And in 2025, Starlink and the rocket business brought in roughly $8 billion in profits, which sounds great, until you remember XAI showed up to ruin the party. Because the consolidated company of SpaceX, which also now includes XAI, ended up losing nearly $5 billion last year on roughly $18.5 billion in revenue. So let's go back to the question from earlier. Who the fuck is buying SpaceX at a $1.75 trillion valuation? And our answer to this question from earlier still stands. It's you. And this is where the real story for the SpaceX IPO actually is. It's not about rockets. It's not about magic satellites in space. It's about the financial system changing the rules right before the biggest IPO in market history. Because on May 1st of this year, NASDAQ adopted something called the Fast Entry Rule. And with SpaceX reportedly targeting a June date for their initial public offering, the timing for this new rule is extremely convenient. But before we get into how we've quietly changed the rules to roll out the red carpet for SpaceX, a quick pause. Because this video is sponsored by WhisperFlow. WhisperFlow is voice to text that actually works. And it's completely changed how I do basically everything on my computer. If you've watched some of my recent videos on the channel, you know I've been working on an upcoming video on the petrodollar system. But the problem is, each of my videos take 20+ hours of research to make. I sift through economic data, government filings, academic papers, and everything else in between. But the reading I can handle. It's the note-taking and typing that kills me. But WhisperFlow fixed that. Their voice-to-text is 4 times faster than typing, so I'm now getting hours back on every video. And it works seamlessly in any app on any device, phone or computer. With WhisperFlow, I just have to switch tabs and talk. And here's how it works. The Saudi central bank's assets under management used to correlate with OPEC prices, but now they're diverging. Actually change that to OPEC oil prices. Meanwhile, the Saudi riyal has been pegged to the dollar for what looks like almost 30 years. Actually change that to 40 years. And the dollar's still on one side of 88% of all FX transactions globally. Actually, let's change that to 89%. Same dictation, 2 different tools, WhisperFlow on the left, built-in voice typing on the right. WhisperFlow nailed every number, cleaned up my mistakes, and formatted it all nice and pretty for me. It's the modern way to work. And if you're interested in trying out WhisperFlow, you can get 1 month of WhisperFlow Pro for free using the link below. Promo code CASUAL. Thank you to WhisperFlow for sponsoring this video. And now back to that red carpet we rolled out for SpaceX, and where it actually leads. The NASDAQ 100 is the gold standard for technology and growth companies. It's not only a badge of honor for companies to be included in it, but there's more than 200 investment products with over $600 billion in assets that track the index. Which means once you're included in the index, it basically forces every investment fund that follows the index to automatically buy your stock, which translates to billions of dollars of investment capital. And under the old rules, a newly listed company had to wait at least 3 months before it could be added to the NASDAQ 100 index. That waiting period existed for a reason. It gave the market time to discover the actual price before passive index funds were forced to buy in.